Rumors and Lies. I write in the naked pages of this diary so that the truth will be known and my fate will not be left to the rumors and lies already whispering through the streets of Sevilla. Many, I am sure, will try to turn my life into a morality play after I am dead. But no man's life is so easily understood or dismissed. I would not risk inscribing my secrets in this diary had I not been convinced to do so by my friend and benefactor, Don Pedro, the Marquis of Mota. I argued that nothing I would write could be circulated in my lifetime without being condemned by the Holy Office of the Inquisition and burned at the stake. The Inquisitor himself branded this danger into my imagination just yesterday. Perhaps it is this fresh threat, or the ultimatum of the king, that has at last caused me to pick up this quill and ink these words. The Marquis insisted that it is for posterity that I should write this diary, one's reputation being the only true immortality. But it is hardly vanity alone that causes me to write. 36 years have passed since my birth, or more correctly, since my mother left me, a swaddled bundle, in the barn of the Convento de la Madre Sagrada. It is no doubt a sign of my advancing years that I have been persuaded for the first time in my life to consider how I will be remembered. Yet there is another desire that leads me to write in this diary. It is to pass on what I have learned about the arts of passion and of the holiness of womanhood. Since I have forsworn matrimony, and have no heirs of my own blood, I must look to all who follow as my descendants, and try to share with them what I have learned from the women I have been privileged to know so well. A man's recollections always tend towards self-flattery, so I will not rely on my testimony alone, and will instead record, as faithfully as possible, not only the events, but the words themselves that were shouted during a duel, or whispered during a passionate embrace. It is this same pride that leads me to begin my account with the most daring seduction I have ever undertaken. My ambition was nothing less than to free the king's chaste and lonely daughter from her imprisonment in the royal palace of the Alcazar, for a night. I knew that if I were caught, it would be my privilege as a noble to place my head on the executioner's block and avoid the shame of the gallows. A man's ambition, however, like his fate, is not always known to him in advance, and as I left the arms of the widow Elvira, I had no hint of the danger that I would embrace last night. A flicker of passion. "One more kiss," Elvira said, pulling gently on the sleeve of my maroon doublet as I dressed quickly. I was late, despite having been warned by the Marquis that my very life depended on my presence at the king's audience. I had every intention of arriving on time, but this resolve melted when I discovered that the young woman in my arms this afternoon had been widowed by the sea. Her loneliness and her desire had not been soothed in all the 5 years since her husband's death. "Just one?" she added, her lips now inclining towards mine. I looked at her smiling face and her black hair, dishevelled by our earlier desire. Her clear brown eyes reflected the flames of the candles that encircled the altar of her bed. How could I refuse her? I held her cheeks with the tips of my fingers and came closer, approaching her face slowly, anticipation being everything. I brushed her lips gently with mine, and then tickled the corner of her mouth with the smallest tip of my tongue. I knew not to smother her with kisses, so she would have to defend herself from my assault. I sipped